Hello out there. Welcome to Wake Up to the Bible. I'm Daniel Kaplan. I'm here with my father, Dr. Kaplan. Together, we're going through the books of the law, Genesis through Deuteronomy, over the course of this year, doing a little bit every day, the traditional Jewish portions for the week. Today is a rather short one. It's only 6 verses, Genesis 26, 6 through 12. I'll be reading the Robert Alter translation, and then we'll discuss what we read. And Isaac dwelled in Gerar, and the men of the place asked of his wife, and he said, She is my sister, fearing to say my wife, lest the men of the place kill me over Rebekah, for she is comely to look at. And it happened at his time there drew on that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out the window and saw, and there was Isaac playing with Rebekah his wife. And Abimelech summoned Isaac, and he said, Why, look, she is your wife, and how could you say she is my sister? And Isaac said to him, For I thought lest I die over her. And Abimelech said, What is this you have done to us? one of the people may have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us. And Abimelech commanded all the people, saying, Whoever touches this man or his wife is doomed to die. And Isaac sowed in that land, and he reaped that year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. So it's a short passage, but this is a repeat. This is the third time we've had this situation in Genesis where we have a character, first Abraham, now Isaac, saying that his wife is really his sister, and there are consequences, although there are some differences in this one. In this one, it doesn't escalate nearly as badly as the other two situations. But what do you make of it? You know, it's a pattern of 3, so that's kind of interesting. Why do you suppose that we get the same sort of story 3 times? It seems like there may be something more to this than kind of meets the eye. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it may be a cautionary tale that the Bible tells us to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves, but that can be carried to an extreme where
Mhm.
you're just frankly,
Dishonest.
yeah, dishonest. And
Right.
yeah, it's interesting here, as I recall. I think at least in one other account, the wife is brought into it. Here he says she is my sister, and it doesn't say that Rebecca ever claimed to be that.
Uh-huh.
So the onus seems to be more so on Isaac, and she's only his sister in a very loose sense. At least Sarah was Abraham's half sister, but in this case she's a cousin, a second cousin. So it's really even more extreme here. Now it seems to me that he was just buying time by calling her the sister. That way, I guess there'd be various suitors competing for her and so
Uh-huh.
on. But sooner or later, he would have probably had to move on. So I get maybe this was just an expediency because he didn't expect to be there long term. Because this is it seems to me this is only a short term solution to that problem. But it's also interesting to me the reaction of Abimelech, and this could be because of a memory of the earlier problem.
Mm-hmm.
Abimelech seems to be a title of rulers of
Mm.
the Philistines. It means like father king, Abimelech,
I gotcha.
and it rather than a personal name, it's like Pharaoh. It
Uh-huh.
seems to be a title. So this isn't necessarily the same
Mm.
Abimelech because he would be quite old. More so than one would reasonably expect, even at that time in history.
Yeah.
So but it seemed that the memory of the problem perhaps is there, although it's not talked about. But maybe that's part of it because the reaction here is rather extreme.
Mm-hmm.
He says anybody who messes with her will be executed.
Right.
So that's again, it does show that that particular issue was strong in that culture,
Right.
even though it was a polygamous culture. But once somebody has a wife, you leave her alone. You may
Mm-hmm.
have several, but still,
Right.
you leave them alone. It was seemed to be a very strong principle in that culture.
Well, what's also interesting is his premise is not that they would just take her, it's that they would kill him because I guess they have to get him out of the way in order to do so. But ultimately, when it's found out, this is the one where one of the differences is that they don't have to be punished. They just inherently know that this isn't the right way, so they have
Yeah.
kind of morally progressed. They're in a better place because they're angry because they feel like they would have inadvertently done something wrong because of a lack of information, which is different than before. Before you have, they seem to respond more to a divine punishment. So perhaps that's kind of what this is getting at. It's kind of showing us kind of how things rolled along with the outside world in this period of time. It also does tell you that, as somebody who has biblical standards, you don't always have to assume the worst in everybody else, that you don't have to assume that they don't share your biblical standard, because in this situation, he apparently was quite off um, in that. What's interesting too, though, is it does specifically call out that the way that they figure it out is that Isaac is engaging in some sort of physical affection with his wife. Um, that is at least, it doesn't seem, maybe it's like, flaunting or something, because they say looked out the window or something, so perhaps, thought they were in a private situation and they weren't. But the difference is I wonder if that's a point of difference between the way Abraham was conducting himself in this time frame and Isaac. Perhaps Abraham was kind of going with the ruse a little bit more and being more standoffish, and Isaac was not. um, there's something to be said for that too, though, right? It's something to be said about Isaac, that even in a situation where he's trying to pass off that she's his sister, that he's still engaging in this sort of physical activity. Um, and I don't think of that as a negative thing. I think that as a positive thing. I think it's an interesting point of difference between Abraham and Isaac, perhaps.
Yeah, it says he was playing with her, for having fun with her. It's the same root as his name,
Right.
Isaac. It's kind of a play on words in a way,
Mm-hmm.
and it sort of leaves it to your imagination.
Right.
But the traditional King James, I think, said sporting
Right.
was the word. Now I see the New King James gets more interpretive, and it says showing endearment. That the New King
Mhm.
James goes beyond the literal to kind of be more, interpretive.
Yeah. I
But
think playing is better because I like that.
yeah, playing is better. Robert Alter is good at. I like his translations generally. I'm not 100% on board, but I like his translations. But this was they thought that they weren't being seen, but it does show. Frankly, a biblical couple ought to be an affectionate couple. Frankly,
Right. And but again, I just think it's that point of difference, right? Now, if you take this a little bit further, I'm just trying to think of like what this could be getting at. I'm trying to think of any sort of, I mean, I kind of think of, Peter denying Jesus 3 times, maybe.
hmm
I'm trying to think of, because it just seems like there's more of a reason for these stories than just the the straightforward. This is what happened. That there is a deeper lesson. I haven't quite put my finger on it. Maybe you have. If you have, you can comment below because I'm really interested to hear your theories. Because I think that if the Bible's going to repeat something 3 times as a concept, I feel like this is getting at something, and I'm not sure if we've really quite gotten there. So,
it does show human nature that constantly repeating the same mistake. Abraham himself does it twice, and
right.
now Isaac does it. You'd think Isaac would have heard from Abraham what happened in that case.
Yeah. On the flip side, though, it always works out, and they always get rewarded on the other side. So that's the other interesting thing about these stories, right? There are never negative ramifications that are long lasting. It always works out, and then it always ends up where they financially reap a benefit off of it.
Yeah,
So it is really fascinating. Like
yeah,
it
right.
is a little bit tricky. So some people do take a different sort of tactic, and they think that that we should not be too critical on them. That they actually are potentially right. They are wise as serpent, harmless as dove sort of situation, and then what the story is about is more how the people are reacting. I'm not inclined to naturally go that way because I just tend to be very against anything that's slightly dishonest, but I can't disregard that completely because between something really horrific happening to somebody and lying, sometimes it's like you're forced to do the lesser sin kind of thing, and that's a hairy thing we'll get to because that happens a lot in these Old Testament accounts. In we'll get to more stories like that, and they are ones you have to wrestle with in terms of what is the standard for honesty when somebody has malicious intent, and it's not always as easy as some people want to make it out.
Something just occurred to me. Uh, Jacob, we always think about the fact that Jacob tricked Esau and then Laban tricked Jacob.
Right.
But here Isaac tricked the Philistines, but later on his wife tricked him.
Right. There's a lot of trickery going
So,
on.
but I'm saying there's a little bit of what we call in Hebrew mida keneged mida, measure for measure, or
Right.
the term karma comes up in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How people generically talk about karma.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Not the religious system.
Right.
Yeah. No, that is interesting. Yeah, you do have this idea that he is willing to do that, and that kind of just runs in the family. There's a lack of honesty, Laban, and it just goes on and on and on. So yeah, that is interesting. All right. Any other comments about this section? We'll be moving on, and we'll be talking about what comes to Jacob and Esau next, I believe. And we will see you tomorrow. If you haven't yet, hit the bell, subscribe. It's a good year to read the law, I think. Let's go.